You met someone today and decided in under a second whether you could trust them. You didn't choose to. You just knew. Before they finished their first sentence, some quiet part of you had already filed them away as safe or unsafe, warm or cold, someone to lean toward or someone to keep at arm's length. It felt like instinct. It felt like reading the room. But the real answer is far stranger. Because the judgment you made wasn't really about them at all. It was about a face your brain has been trying to read for 2 million years. Think about the last time you trusted a stranger immediately. Maybe a new coworker, maybe a person on a train, maybe a doctor you'd never met whose calm voice made you exhale. You probably told yourself you were a good judge of character. Most people believe that about themselves, but here's the uncomfortable part. You are not judging character. You are judging shape. A psychologist named Alex Todorov at Princeton spent years studying exactly how fast humans decide whether to trust a face. What he found should unsettle you. When he showed people photographs of complete strangers, they formed confident judgments of trustworthiness in around 1/10 of a second. Not a full second. A tenth. Faster than you can blink twice. And giving people more time to look did almost nothing to change their first verdict. It only made them more sure of it. So what is your brain actually reacting to in that 1/10 of a second? Tiny things. A slightly upturned mouth. The width of a jaw. How far apart the eyes sit. Eyebrows that rest a little higher or a little lower. None of these features tell you anything real about whether a person will lie to you, help you, or let you down. And yet your brain treats them like evidence in a courtroom. It reads a soft, rounded, open face and whispers safe. It reads a sharp, angular, heavy-browed face and whispers careful. This is the stranger effect. It is the gap between how much you trust your snap judgment and how little that judgment actually knows. To understand why your brain does this, you have to leave the modern world behind. You have to go back to a time before language was rich, before names, before reputations could travel ahead of a person and announce who they were. Picture your ancestor stepping out of the trees and seeing, across a clearing, another human being they have never met. This is the most dangerous moment in their life. That stranger could be a trading partner, a future mate, a member of a rival group holding a sharpened stone. There was no time to gather references. There was no second meeting to correct a bad guess. The decision had to happen now. In the body, faster than thought. And the ancestors who hesitated, who waited for more information, who tried to be fair and reserve judgment, were often the ancestors who did not live long enough to pass on that patience. So your brain became a machine for the instant verdict. It learned to scan a face and gamble, approach or avoid, trust or run. And because being wrong about a threat could kill you, while being wrong about a friend only cost you a missed friendship, the machine was tuned to be jumpy. It would rather flinch from 100 kind strangers than relax around one dangerous one. That bias kept your ancestors alive. It also lives, fully intact, behind your eyes right now. But here's the twist. The world your face-reading machine was built for no longer exists. Your ancestors met maybe a few hundred people in an entire lifetime. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar found that the natural size of a human social world hovers around 150 people. That's the rough limit of how many relationships a human brain can genuinely hold. 150 faces you actually know. 150 stories you can keep straight. Now think about how many strangers you see in a single day. Hundreds. On the street, on the train, on every screen you touch. A river of unfamiliar faces, far more than any human across 2 million years was ever meant to process. And your ancient face-reading machine doesn't know the rules have changed. It keeps running. It keeps gambling. It keeps slapping a verdict of trust or suspicion onto every face that floats past, using clues that meant something in a forest clearing and mean almost nothing on a crowded street. So who pays the price for this? The people whose faces happen to fall on the wrong side of an instinct they never chose. The psychologist Leslie Zebrowitz spent her career studying something she called baby face overgeneralization. People with rounder faces, bigger eyes, smaller chins, the soft features of an infant, are reflexively read as more honest, more innocent, more harmless. It feels like kindness. It is actually a glitch. Your brain evolved a powerful urge to protect babies, and it overgeneralizes that urge onto any adult who happens to share a few of those features. Zebrowitz found this had real consequences. In courtrooms, baby-faced defendants were more likely to be judged innocent of crimes involving intent and more likely to be found guilty of crimes of negligence. As if a soft face simply could not have meant to do harm. The face was speaking louder than the facts. And no one in the room knew they were listening to it. Have you ever instantly disliked someone who turned out to be wonderful? You probably blame them. A bad vibe. Something off. But the something off may have lived entirely in your own wiring, a sharp jaw or a flat expression triggering an alarm that had nothing to do with who they were. This is the cruelty hidden inside the stranger effect. It is invisible. It feels like perception, not prejudice. It feels like you are simply seeing clearly, when really you are seeing through 2 million years of survival fear. There is another layer to this, and it goes deeper than faces. In the 1920s, a psychologist named Edward Thorndike noticed something strange while studying how military officers rated their soldiers. When an officer thought a soldier was physically impressive, he also rated that soldier as smarter, more loyal, and more capable. Even when those things had no connection to each other at all. One good impression bled into everything. Thorndike called it the halo effect. Your brain hates holding a complicated picture of a person, so it doesn't. It grabs one strong signal, often the face, often in that first tenth of a second, and it paints the rest of the person in the same color. A trustworthy face becomes a trustworthy mind, a trustworthy heart, a trustworthy story. You build an entire human being out of a jawline, and then you defend that invented person because admitting your first read was wrong feels like admitting you can't see at all. Decades later, Solomon Asch proved how stubborn this is. He showed people a list of traits describing a stranger, and simply changing the order of the words changed everything. When the warm traits came first, the whole person glowed. When the cold traits came first, the same exact list described someone people wanted to avoid. The information was identical. Only the first impression had moved, and the first impression dragged the rest behind it like a current. So step back and look at what your brain is really doing. It meets a stranger. It reads a face in a tenth of a second. It picks one signal. It paints the whole person in that color. It locks the verdict in. And then it spends the rest of the encounter quietly gathering evidence to prove itself right. This is not judgment. This is a story your ancestors needed to survive, still being told inside a world that no longer matches it. Now here is the question that should follow you out of this video. If your trust runs this fast and this blind, how many people have you already misread? The con artist who feels warm and open is not an accident. The most successful manipulators across history have not been the ones who looked dangerous. They were the ones who looked safe, soft features, steady eye contact, a face your ancient machine waved straight through the gate. Meanwhile, somewhere in your past, there is almost certainly a person you flinched away from, a person you never gave a chance, whose only crime was a face that tripped an alarm older than language. Your instinct is not lying to you on purpose. It is doing exactly what it was built to do. It is keeping you alive in a clearing that no longer exists, reading faces in a tenth of a second because once, that tenth of a second was the difference between morning and never. The tragedy is only that you carry it into rooms it was never meant for. Job interviews, first dates, the faces on your screen telling you who to fear and who to follow. So what do you do with this? You don't get to turn the machine off. It is older than you, deeper than thought, and it will keep firing whether you want it to or not. But you can learn to hear it. You can notice the moment a face hands you a verdict you didn't earn, and you can hold that verdict loosely, the way you'd hold a guess. You can give the soft-faced stranger a little more scrutiny, and the sharp-faced stranger a little more grace. You can remember that the most honest thing your snap judgment ever tells you is how little it actually knows. Because you met someone today and decided, in under a second, whether you could trust them. You didn't choose to, but now at least you know who was really doing the choosing. Not you. A frightened ancestor. Standing at the edge of a clearing 2 million years ago, still trying to keep you alive in a world that has already moved on.